Hello, hello. It's Orit here, and we are back with Lasting Love Real Talk. I am just going to take a moment to share this video in my free Facebook group, the Lasting Love Movement. Come join us there if you want to be a part of this amazing movement that is happening right now, and join the discussion. So today I'm answering two questions from members of the Lasting Love Movement family. The first question, actually, hold on. Before I answer the first question, I was like, okay, remember to say this. I really want to emphasize that if you do stumble upon my videos, or if you've wanted to ask me questions, you're interested in the answers, that I do not specialize in narcissistic relationships or narcissistic behavior. And I'm specifically talking to you if you are someone who has experienced trauma in the past and you're with a healthy partner and the trauma is so lodged in your body and so controlling your behaviors now that it's actually sabotaging your relationship. So I can't answer questions about narcissism, and unless it's like something that you've experienced kind of growing up as childhood trauma, I can help you understand how that's impacting your relationship now. But if you're currently in a narcissistic relationship, this will not apply to you. If you want to stick around anyway, just to understand more about your trauma, then you might get something out of this video. I also want to emphasize that as I'm answering these questions, I'm specifically talking to you if you've already been on a healing journey for 3 to 20 plus years, and you're tired of thinking about how you want to change, tired of trying all these different modalities, and you actually want to create a real lasting shift in your body. This isn't really for someone who's never been to therapy or just starting their healing journey. And that's why I might seem a little bit blunt in my messages that you see online, because I know you don't want sugarcoating anymore. You're tired of being stuck, and I'm here keeping it real. That's why we're doing a Lasting Love Real Talk. Anyway, on that note, I'll answer question number 1. How do I stop thinking about it when something happens that triggers my fear factor? So when something happens, let's say you're with your partner and they sneak up on behind you to give you a hug or show you some physical affection, and then you have like this impulse. You basically have this impulse to punch them in the face to protect yourself, even though you know that, oh, they were just trying to show me love. You know that intellectually. That's an example of something that might happen that triggers your fear factor. And then that thinking about it that happens is like, oh my gosh, what did I do? Like, they were just trying to love me. They were just trying to show me affection, and then I pushed them away. And how come I can't change? And right. And then you like can't stop thinking about it. And so if some version of this is happening for you, the fact that you are thinking so much about it, those thoughts that go on and on, like the ruminating about what just happened and how could I have acted differently and what could I have said differently, that's actually a defense mechanism for shifting the fear factor that's getting triggered all the time. Because this question is kind of like an oxymoron. It's like the thinking that happens in your brain happens in your prefrontal cortex. It's more of your executive functioning part of your brain where you think and plan and reflect, and you've got all these thoughts, and right. And let me try to say something differently. That's your higher functioning part of your brain. The fear factor that's happening is in your amygdala. That is your fear center. And that is your nervous system reacting within a matter of milliseconds, because there's something that's happening that triggers the trauma from your past. So that when your partner sneaks up behind you and just wants to do something that shows you that you're special and they adore you, logically, after the fact that that's what they were trying to do. But in the moment, your survival system, your amygdala gets your amygdala gets that signal and it reacts with the fear, whether you fight or you flight or you freeze or you shut down. Hey, Daisy, nice to see you here. So what needs to happen in order for those impulse survival reactions to shift is that your nervous system has to be rewired to be able to feel fear coming up in your body, right? So my partner sneaks up behind me. I feel that fear, I feel that jumpiness or whatever happens to you in that moment. But instead of your body reacting right away to the point where it's uncontrollable, you actually are able to feel that fear coming up and like be with it for a moment and then decide how you want to respond. So instead of your nervous system and your amygdala and your fear center controlling you, you are actually in command of your body's behaviors and your responses. And that is that requires a process where you're in the safe context of a therapeutic relationship, rewiring your nervous system. That's actually what we do in my Let Love In program. But for the purpose of this answer, it's important to say that when you ruminate in thoughts, you're doing the opposite of eliminating that fear factor coming up. So thinking about it brings you up here, it brings you in the higher functioning part of your brain, and where the healing, the rewiring needs to happen is in the amygdala, is in the nervous system, is in the nonverbal subconscious of your body. So it's probably not the answer that you want, but you can't stop thinking about it. I mean, you can stop thinking about it, but it's very hard to stop thinking about, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Like I just reacted, because your nervous system is so scared of changing that the thinking actually serves as a way to avoid being in the body where you actually need to be to shift your reactivity. I hope that makes sense. So for a lasting way to stop thinking about it, it does require rewiring your nervous system. But some things that you can try, just test out is, if something like that happens where you react, you had conflict with your partner, you got in your car, you ran away. It's, the reaction happened, you did it. There's no amount of talking or thinking about it that can change that, and that can change your nervous system's survival response. But you can change what happens afterwards, right? Instead of ruminating about it, instead of thinking and going over the scene in your head 70 times, you can actually tune into your body instead and be like, well, what's coming up right now? What am I feeling? And what is it? What sensations are happening in your body? And just start there, because the more that you feel safe to be in your body, the more that you get out of your head and the more that you prepare your nervous system and your body for that lasting healing through rewiring your nervous system. Because until you have that, at least an initial sense of trust in yourself to be in your body, you won't be able to heal your trauma, because you'll just basically function on the story that it's not safe to come home to your body. It's not safe to be in there. And if you don't feel safe to be in your body, well, then how are you going to release the trauma that's stored inside? So I hope that helps. Let me see if there were any comments on that. All right, so I thought I saw a comment. Okay, let's see what else. The next question is, how do I know if it's my trauma triggering me or if it's my partner's trauma that's triggering me? This is such a good question. I've actually gotten this a few times in the last couple of days. And again, reminder, this does not apply to you if you're in a narcissistic relationship, because of course you're going to get triggered. And I specifically help women who are in healthy relationships or who are with healthy, supportive, loving partners. But still, even in a healthy relationship, you're each going to have triggers. So let's get that out of the way first, right? Like, it just because you get triggered in your relationship and your partner gets triggered in your relationship does not mean that your relationship is unhealthy. Like, we are always going to naturally trigger each other. The trigger isn't the issue, it's how we react, right? So if my partner triggers me because they left a mess in the kitchen again, then that might trigger me and be like, oh, like, why can't he just clean up? Okay, I'm just telling you a real life story here. Even though he says the same thing about me, he's like, you don't clean up, you're the one who doesn't put things away. And I'm like, no, it's you. Anyway, it's okay to feel that way. But if I'm reacting, like yelling at him, sending him angry text messages, calling him and being like, why didn't you, right? That's the reaction to the trigger. And that's really intense. And that shows us that it's so much more than about cleaning the kitchen. It's, they don't care about me. They don't care about my needs. They never listen to me. If they cared about me, they would clean the kitchen. They would listen. And so it's the intensity of the response that you have that that matters. So it's okay if you and your partner trigger each other. That's normal. Like, how could you not, especially if you're living with someone, or especially if you've been married to the same person, you're going to trigger each other. But it's about, again, going back to question number one, like, I feel like the frustration of that, but we can talk about it and communicate it really well. Like, and we can come to a resolution really well, or we can laugh about it. Like, Aaron and I laugh about this thing where I say, you left that out in the kitchen. He's like, actually, you're the one who left it out. And then I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's true. Like, I automatically went to blaming him, and actually I was the one who left out the container of milk. And so we laugh about it, and it's like, okay, but in the past I would have just felt so vulnerable and stupid and be like, nope, I'm not wrong. Nope, it was you. And I can't admit to myself that I got angry with you, even though it was completely something that I did. So anyway, how do you know? Then how do you know if it's your trauma that's being triggered or their trauma? And it's actually really hard to distinguish. Like, we're always in a flow of communication, and there's always this back and forth. So we could kind of go crazy and be like, all right, well, this fight started here, but this fight also started with them saying this thing, and then I said this thing. So actually it started with their trigger, and then it triggered me, and then I triggered them, right? Like, that is so exhausting and confusing. And again, it goes back to question number one of like, this thinking or this trying to figure out is actually a defense mechanism against what really needs to happen. So instead of trying to figure out, like, is that my trauma? Is that theirs? Like, who triggered who first? And what does that mean about like, instead of all of that overanalyzation and analyzation, I don't think that's a real word, but over analysis and more ruminating, trying to figure it out, what's really important here is how you respond to the triggers. So let's say you're like 3 days into a disagreement with your partner, which, by the way, when you heal your trauma and you are in a healthy relationship, 3-day long fights don't happen. It just doesn't. And I'm not trying to judge or shame anybody, but like, I used to get into like week-long fight, well, maybe not week-long, but like few days long arguments or just silence or quietness with Aaron because I was being passive aggressive. I was shutting him out because I didn't want to be vulnerable and show that I was really hurt about something. And then that triggered his trauma of like his past stuff, which, I'm not going to share because that's his personal thing, but that triggered his trauma and made him want to take more space from me when I was just like, no, like, let's talk about this. Or I was like, okay, fine, leave. I don't care. I don't want you anyway. Get out of my life. That would last like 3 days. But now that I've healed my trauma, we come up against stuff, of course, but it's never a fight. It's there's tension, and it's difficult sometimes, but it's like, it's easy to flow through and communicate. Okay. But let's say you've been in a fight or an argument or like distance for 3 days at this point, it's not really going to shift much if you're like, well, where did this start and whose trauma is really being triggered here? What matters is that you have this tension, you're in this argument, and really deep down, all you want is to be loved and seen, both of you, or all of you, if you're in a polyamorous kind of relationship. Like, that's what we want deep down, is just to be heard, loved, seen, validated, supported. And so someone has to take the first step here. If you've been, distanced for a while, if there's tension, if there's a wall up, if we try to reflect and figure out, well, whose trauma is this and how can I solve it? It keeps you further away from the real resolution that you want, is to be close again, is to be connected, is to support each other, even though you're both feeling hurt or one of you is feeling hurt. And that requires some real vulnerability. I've shared this story about my former client, Katie, who would always send her partner to the couch whenever they got into a fight and was like, get out of here. Don't want to, like, we're not sleeping in the same room. Nope. And one night, while working with me in the Let Love In program, we actually, in that session, that very same day, we did a movement experience together where when she felt really vulnerable and like closing up and hiding, I asked her to open up her body. I asked her to be, to do some movements that would actually help her stay present and reach out. And that's exactly what happened later that night. She did actually kick him out originally, but then not very much longer after, she went out to the couch where he was and reached out, like literally reached out her hand. Like, her body already knew how to do that because we did that together in the safe context of our therapeutic relationship. And he reached back. And this was like absolutely revolutionary for them because they were used to being in days-long separations and arguments, where now she went and she reached out. Like, it felt really hard. It was everything, but it changed the very nature of how they communicated now. Because even when they're upset with each other, even when they are triggering each other, no matter who triggered who first, they could come together again. And that's the important piece. They could still accept each other and love each other and show that to each other, instead of old patterns of pushing away or hiding, or, the things that trauma makes us do when it's unresolved. I have to sneeze. Never mind. I don't think it's coming. Anytime I say I have to sneeze, and then I like stop it. So that is I think that's the more important answer to that question. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you have follow-up questions, or if you have new questions that you want to ask me, I keep a list going, and I will bring your question to the Lasting Love Real Talk when I'm able to, when your question when it's your turn. That's what I'm trying to say. And until then, I would love to invite you to check out to consider joining my Let Love In program if you are ready for that full lasting trauma release, if you are ready to rewire your nervous system so that you don't get stuck in these ruminating thoughts of like, oh, what could I have done better? And so you don't get caught up in playing out these scenarios of like, what just happened, and whose trauma was that, or who triggered who, and blocking out your partner, or so afraid of being vulnerable that you're actually pushing them away, when all you want is for them to see you and love you, and like they do, but like to feel that and take that in and be more connected than you ever have before, because you can be there for each other through the good times and through conflict. And so if you're ready to do the real work that needs to happen, that is what Let Love In offers. And if you want to hear more details about the program, I can fill you in on all of that, how it works, what's included, the price. and any questions, any other questions that you might have. So send me a private message if you're interested in hearing more about Let Love In. And if you just have questions that you'd like for me to answer in the Lasting Love Real Talk, leave them in the comments below. All right. Thanks so much for joining me as usual. And until next time, I hope you know that you deserve to be able to let love in.